welcome to Step Into a Story. We are on episode, I think, number 13. We are here with Barry Black, a former bomb expert, bomb tech. So, Mr. Black had a diverse 31-year FBI career involving complex financial crimes and tactical operations as a SWAT sniper and master bomb technician. He was a first responder to the bombing of Oklahoma City's Federal Building and other high-profile domestic events such as the Atlanta Olympic bombing and the 9/11 New York City attack. Mr. Black trained specialized international counterterrorism units and served as a subject matter expert for the U.S. Congress, State Department, Scotland Yard. Just totally as a side note, I just inquired about getting a Highland cattle. So we do like all things Scottish here, and NATO. That's not to say we like NATO. That's not to say we dislike them. That's just to say I interrupted myself. You were an expert for NATO. He is a member of Oklahoma's Law Enforcement Hall of Fame, an Honorary Air Force Commander, and currently on faculty at a nationally recognized forensic science institute. So, welcome, Barry Black. And, as we've been joking, this will prove to be a very explosive interview if it doesn't bomb. So, our first drink, and it will become quite obvious why we chose this, is called The Farm. And by the way, you will notice, usually I dress kind of nice, but I dressed farm today since you referenced farms twice in your three readings. And our first drink is called The Farm. So this first drink is quite interesting. Can you see that? All the stuff in there?
Right.
So this has a quarter. This has now slices of, it's supposed to be purple bell pepper, but ours is red. And it's got a sprig of cilantro, 2 ounces of Waterloo gin. Mine has 1 ounce of fresh grapefruit juice. The recipe calls for 2 ounces, but somebody very kindly decided I would not like 2 ounces of grapefruit juice, and that somebody is correct. A quarter of fresh lime juice, a dash of salt, and a dash of simple syrup, plus thin slices of bell pepper to garnish. So I think that you can see all of those peppers in there, can't you? And the cilantro and all.
Yeah.
So hopefully you will get a chance to make this and try it at home.
Next time I'm in Tennessee, maybe.
Yes, hopefully you can stop by. To me, this tastes not what I expected. It tastes a little bit almost like a Bloody Mary. It's got that taste to it, and I hate Bloody Marys. I don't hate this though. This is not bad. So go ahead with rating number 1.
Great. So this tells a story about a SWAT team out in rural Oklahoma. We were going after a pretty dangerous fugitive. So technology like GPS and night vision weren't readily available then. So we navigated the rural terrain using compasses and spotty moonlight, careful to avoid the farmhouses. After slowly traversing about 1.5 miles of farmland, we assumed a position in some high grass beneath a barbed wire fence, roughly 100 yards from Daryl's home. We didn't venture too close because aerial photographs showed dozens of pit bulls staked out in a field west of the house. From our vantage, we could cover the front, relying on an Oklahoma Highway Patrol SWAT team to cover the rear. A specialized Bureau aircraft called Night Stalker began relaying our intel and infrared images back to the command post. In the weeks leading up to the operation, analysts had obtained much information about the entire Bridger family. Things like physical descriptions, personal habits, unique traits or mannerisms, and the types of cars they drove. The informant cautioned that Daryl's wife and son were in the house, which was important to know in case we had to make a tactical entry. The wind and rain finally stopped and the night grew quiet. We could barely hear Night Stalker circling overhead. Shortly after 10 p.m., several people began hanging Christmas lights along the front porch, their voices carried on the still night air. About 11:30, a man fitting Daryl's build stepped off the porch, backlit by the house. I could only see a silhouette through my scope, but he got into an old Pontiac like Daryl was known to drive. Just before the engine started, a boy of about 10 ran onto the porch and shouted with a notable stutter, "Dad, Mom said don't forget the milk." Our background on Daryl's family indicated his 10-year-old son had a speech impediment. The boy's age, description, and speech pattern fit the intel, so I radioed Night Stalker. Daryl Bridges is in the vehicle that's pulling through the farm gate now. They tracked the car using thermal imagery and vectored in an arrest team once he was a safe distance from the house. Under interrogation, he admitted, "Yeah, Jamie's there, but you boys should know he's always got a rifle handy." Based on that information, the house was surrounded just after midnight. Our SWAT team covered the front and OHPs covered the rear. Over a bullhorn, Jamie was ordered to come out. A woman opened the front and shouted, "Jamie ain't in here, leave us alone." About that time, our radios crackled. Troopers at the back reported Jamie had knocked out a second floor window and was stepping out onto the roof. "I think he's seen us. He's ducked back inside, second floor, northwest corner of their house," the trooper said. Our team immediately entered the first floor and secured each occupant, quickly confirming Jamie was upstairs. When called by name, he cracked open the door of a small bedroom, brandishing an assault rifle and daring agents, "Come on up to get me." The standoff ended when the SWAT team leader tossed a flashbang into the room. Often called a stun grenade, its deafening report and intense 7 million candela flash had the desired effect. Jamie dropped his rifle and staggered to the landing, saying, "Don't bomb me no more." It was a successful operation with 2 arrests and no injuries.
Very nice. I had my planned questions, but my brain doesn't work that way. I remembered something I really wanted to ask you when I was reading the book, and I'm about halfway through the whole book. You mentioned something I wouldn't have remembered, that the first kind of attack on Waco by the FBI was on April 19th, correct?
Right. Well, it wasn't an attack that we instigated. There had been another agency tried to execute some warrants in February. There was a
Okay.
tremendous gunfight. Some federal agents were killed. This other agency, some of the Davidians inside were killed, and there was kind of a pause. And during
Mhm.
that pause, it was determined that the FBI should go down and try to rectify the situation. But it did end on April 19th with a horrific fire that was set from inside the compound.
Okay. Okay. The reason that stuck with me is because you also were at, is it the Fred Murrah Federal Building?
The Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building,
Alfred.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. I will never forget that day, April 19th, 1995, because I was actually in the hospital having just given birth to my second daughter. And so the 2 dates jumped out at me, that McVeigh bombed that building on April 19th. And he was also at Waco. And in fact, you talk about a reporter interviewing him. Did he deliberately choose April 19th because that's when the tear gas went into Waco?
Right. So, yes, it was an important day to McVeigh. It was also
Okay.
the 220th anniversary of the shot heard around the world, the American
Of course
independence.
it was.
Yes. And
Yes.
that date was so important, he actually used April 19th as his fake date of birth on his fake driver's
Really?
license, which he
Okay.
used to acquire the
Okay.
truck that delivered the
Yeah.
bomb.
I should have remembered that because I did know that the day my daughter was born was the night of Paul Revere's famous ride.
Right.
So, there's kind of a funny story about that. She's the only one of my 9 kids who was actually born late. So she was due April 16th, and I was playing trombone at an Easter service that day, hoping I didn't go into labor. So, yeah, but that did jump out at me. So I mean, you've had a very interesting life, very interesting career. What made you decide to write it as a memoir? I think this could be called a memoir.
Well, yeah, the publisher calls it a memoir, so I'm going to go
Okay.
with that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I wanted to be in the FBI since I was a little kid. And when I finally got my letter to Quantico, one of my childhood friends said, "Look, I know you too well. You're going to forget all the cool stuff. So you need to start writing things down."
Mm-hmm.
So over the next 31 years, I just kind of made little notes when I would travel from, Mogadishu or Kathmandu or someplace, why we
Mm-hmm.
were there, what we were doing, what we ate, the travel
Mm-hmm.
route, just the odd things. And when I retired, I had a little extra time, strung them together as stories, really for my son one day.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Never intended to write a book like this, but a publisher contacted me to write a forensic science textbook. I teach at a college now, I
Hmm.
said, well, I never thought about it writing a textbook, but I do have this compilation of stories. They read them and were interested,
Oh,
and now it's a
wow.
book. So I'm very fortunate.
So you're one of the rare writers that publication sort of falls in your lap.
It fell squarely in my lap. Yeah, I did some research. I thought about maybe publishing it, but it seemed
Hmm.
like an uphill climb. I'm an accountant, so I go to the statistics, and it said less than 2% of manuscripts get published. So I wasn't going to play those odds, but it did. It just came to me. And it was a
Right?
really kind of a miracle that it ended up like this.
Right. Well, I think it's an interesting story and is really going to give people a lot of insight into what goes on that we out here in the world don't see. But you talk a lot. I noticed this phrase comes up over and over about we didn't have such and such back then. What was it to you being in the field, watching all these new things coming out?
It was unbelievable. We literally we didn't have computers. We would
Hmm.
share a hardline telephone, one phone to each two agents. We had to share cars back in the day. Uh, it's changed dramatically, but we got computers. When I became a bomb technician in after the Waco fire, there were still homemade disruptors, homemade tools, and now
Hmm.
I ended up with a patent for a tool after the Boston Marathon bombings, and just the things that technology make available have
Hmm.
really improved the safety for these types of operations.
And that's what I was going to ask because I read years ago that so much of our modern inventions that we use out in the civilian world actually were created for the military. But the issue is that we create a better weapon and they create a better defense, and then they create an even better weapon. So we create an even better defense, and it just keeps going. But it sounds like overall FBI work agents out in the field are a little safer than they were.
Oh, absolutely. Everything from the body armor. When I started, we carried revolvers, and now we have semi-automatic pistols. We used shotguns, and now we have, military style carbines. So the technology changes. And as far as the counter IED program, the bomb technician part, it is a cat and mouse game. This
Yeah.
this patent that I got was for a tool specifically designed to defeat the types of IEDs that were used in the Boston Marathon bombing, which we had not seen before. So
Hmm.
they changed their bombs, we had to change our tools, and it's a constant learning game.
Okay. This may be like a really basic, obvious question to you, but can you define what a disruptor is?
Sure. So, unlike the movies, we try not to hand dinner and red wire, blue wire, cut things by hand. So,
Hmm.
we use other types of energetic materials. Oftentimes, it's a concentrated jet of water. Water is nearly incompressible, so we can direct that in a very precise way. But there was really no good way to do it. So, when I first started, people would make these out of galvanized steel, plumbing pipe and a
Hmm.
balloon or something, fill that with water, then modify a shotgun shell. It was a very ad hoc and truly unpredictable outcome. Now we characterize our tools and have 99.5, 0.8% success. So it's much safer and much more, we can repeat these results time and time again.
Right. So that's good. Uh, Tell us a little bit about the background of Jamie Bridger and who he was.
So the names in the book have been changed to protect the innocent and the
Oh,
not so innocent. Yeah.
really?
Um, yes. Yeah. Except for the historic names like McVeigh and Nichols and
Okay.
the
Hmm.
Unabomber and some of the ones. Uh, I've learned a lot in publishing a book. So there's a little paragraph up front that the publisher says we're going to put this in. So
Hmm.
the names are not necessarily accurate, but the stories are. Uh,
Okay.
this was a fairly dangerous individual. We had a federal warrant out for him, and informants said he was traveling between different farmhouses in rural southeastern Oklahoma. And I mean rural southeastern Oklahoma, where groups of families would live together on, large multi-acre and even sections of land. And the
Hmm.
informant said if any of the family members see a car they don't recognize, this guy will be gone. So we had to be sort of careful. That's why we did the late night insertion. We deployed off the back of pickup trucks when it would reach a wash in the dirt road where any truck would have to slow down. We would just roll off the back gate into the brush and the ditch and then make our way back then using basically dead reckoning. We didn't have GPS. There were two farmhouses involved. We brought up a SWAT team, an FBI SWAT team from Dallas, and used our state police SWAT team, which we worked very, very well with. My team took the Bridger house where we believed this fugitive to be. Of course, it's a pretty big farmhouse, a lot of area. So as in that first reading, the Highway Patrol team took the rear. My team took the front. I was a sniper, so we deployed first, made our way up to about 100 yards of the house, we had some pretty high power optics at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
we're feeding information to our aircraft, which is called Night Stalker, to try to get an operational picture for the command post. And
Okay.
once I was able to hear that that was him, they made the arrest.
Right. And now he had committed a string of murders, is that correct?
Yes, so murders and then escaped from another local facility, and
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes so-called unlawful flight to avoid prosecution is a federal crime.
Okay.
So and we federal assets can assist our state and local partners as well. That's how our team got involved.
Right. Was his family aware that he'd killed people?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
the whole family knew what was happening. Sure.
And how do you explain them defending and protecting someone who has been doing this stuff? Were they
Well,
just bad apples?
it's often said blood's thicker than water,
Hmm.
so families are a very strong emotional pull. And that's why we try to do a lot of research before we just go knock on a door. The safety of everyone's safety is paramount for us, ours
Yeah,
and theirs. And with
yeah,
the kids there, the relatives there, it was Christmas time. We wanted to do it in such a way where the probability of somebody getting hurt would be remote.
yeah, yeah. And I'm sure they all appreciate that, apart from Jamie himself. So,
Right.
you started as an accountant. How did you get from presumably a desk job, crunching numbers, to being out in the field as a sniper and detonating bombs or, diffusing them?
It was a kind of a strange path, even for FBI standards. But back in the 80s, the FBI was really hiring accountants and lawyers. And as I said, I'd want to be an agent since I was a kid. And I'd touched base with an old friend who was actually my baseball coach. He was an FBI agent.
Mhm.
And he finally put me in touch with a recruiter. And she was pretty blunt. She goes, "What are you studying in college?" I said, "Engineering." She goes, "Well, we're not hiring engineers. We're hiring accountants and lawyers, and accounting's a much faster way in." So I changed degrees, actually changed schools, got an accounting degree, and actually got in the bureau that way.
Okay.
My training agent was a sniper, and you spend about a year tied to that guy's hip. So he would go shoot, so I would go shoot, and we became friends. And he suggested I get on the SWAT team, try out for sniper school, and we were deployed together down in Waco, for instance. He's a great man.
Hmm.
He's since passed away, but that's how I made that change from white collar crimes to the tactical part.
Yeah. But it sounds like through the course of your career, I mean, even within the space of months or years, you would go back and forth from the accounting forensics to being in the field.
Right. A lot of these cases, white collar cases, take years to investigate. And
Hmm.
when you get assigned a bankruptcy fraud case or an international money laundering case, it's just you. You might have a forensic accountant assigned to you to help, process the records, but really nobody knows that case better than you.
Hmm.
So you might have a year or two invested and then get called away on something different, but you
Right.
still have that responsibility.
As I was reading that, I was wondering, I was kind of ironically thinking of my own experience going from being deep in these medieval battles I was writing about to my 7-year-old student walks in for piano lessons. And there's this weird double thing going on in your head. Did it take something to shift from being out in the field with the gun to being behind a desk?
Well, even when I was working white collar, all FBI agents are armed. We have a lot of
Hmm.
different responsibilities. My caseload was just the white collar part. But back then, the tactical business, the SWAT part of it, was a secondary duty. So you would do whatever you were supposed to be doing, and then do the SWAT part as a collateral duty. So it was a
Hmm.
stepping stone. And then, of course, the sniper position is a much smaller subset of the SWAT team itself. So pretty soon it began to eat up a lot of my time.
Okay. No, I have to confess I'm a complete political junkie while I'm out there feeding the animals or whatever. I've always got videos playing. A lot of times it's politics. I listen to these people testifying in front of Congress. You get a certain impression of various congressional members. I'm not asking you to name names, but I'm kind of curious what your experience was. And was it like, these arguments and yelling at each other that we tend to see on videos, or was it totally different?
Well, you're referring to when I testified before Congress. That was actually after I had retired. And you remember the January 6th events. Uh,
Yep. Hmm.
the day of January 6th, there were two bombs, two IEDs found at the two political convention headquarters. And
Right.
it had been about 3 years, and no one had been arrested. And some in Congress felt that the FBI was dragging its feet or not fully investigating it. Why does it take so long? Well, I got a call from a congressman's aide and said, "We would like you to come testify as an expert." I said, "Look, I was retired. I wasn't there." And they said, "That's
Hmm.
why I want you, because you're
Really?
you're out of it, and we want your opinion as an expert on
Yeah.
how these cases work." So basically, I said, look, it took X number of years for us to get Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. It
Hmm.
took years to find Eric Rudolph, the Atlanta Olympic bomber. So these things just take time. This is not TV where you'll solve it in an hour. There's
Hmm.
not always fingerprints. There's not always facial recognition, but given time and enough resources, this will be solved. And it was very shortly thereafter that the FBI found and identified the culprit. So
Okay.
it was just a little bit of reality that this isn't TV or the movies. It just takes some time and good
Right.
investigative work.
So you didn't have Congress members yelling at you and pounding the desk and shouting, I reclaim my time.
Well, there was one who had in my opinion, had a bit of an agenda, and he made
Okay.
his statement. And I just said, "Well, I appreciate your position, but you're just wrong." And
Hmm.
my other retired agent buddies, they texted me immediately, "Did you just tell a congressman he was wrong?" Like, well, they asked me for my opinion, so that's my opinion.
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, they're only human. Of course, they're going to be wrong
Right.
sometimes. So, we're going to move on to drink number two. I am excited about this one, and let me make sure I have them in the correct order. Yes, this is called the Bourbon Smash. Can you see that? And all that stuff in there? So actually, I have the name wrong. It is called the Mango Bourbon Smash, and I bet you already know why why we picked this. So this has 2 ounces of bourbon, half of a ripe mango, chopped up, of course, half an ounce of simple syrup, half an ounce of lemon juice, fresh lemon juice, and it is fresh, 6 to 8 mint leaves, and club soda for the topping. And it should be garnished with a mint sprig. And I don't see my slice of mango, but I'm sure it's going to taste just as good without the slice of mango. So, cheers. I'm slopping here. That is very good. So, yes, once again, you'll have to get to Tennessee and we'll make you one and you can try
Great.
it. Or I'll send you the recipes and you can try them at home.
Look
Go
forward
ahead
to it.
with reading number two.
So this took place over a holiday weekend. It was Memorial Day. So taking advantage of the holiday, I took the family to Disney World. While standing in line at Space Mountain, the counter IED unit at headquarters called. "Hey, ITOS," which is the International Terrorism Operations Section, Needs a hand with some training. Can you be in the Maldives in about 2 weeks? From there, you'll go to India. I said, well, sure, but where are the Maldives? It's an island nation in the Indian Ocean straddling the equator about 435 miles southwest of Sri Lanka. Have your office FedEx me your official passport, and I'll get Danielle over at OIO, which is the Office of International Operations, to secure your visa for India. We'll let the embassies know you're coming. Upon my return from the Magic Kingdom, there was a plane ticket to Mali on my desk, but no passport or visa. I called Danielle at OIO. She said, yeah, there was a little snag at the Indian embassy, but you should have your passport and visa by the 3rd. I said, well, that's cutting it a little close. I'll leave on the 5th. Of course, it didn't arrive on time, and Danielle called early the morning of my departure. All right, the good news is I have your visa, but your passport is still in D.C. There was a little delay at FedEx. Why don't you just fly to headquarters and pick it up? Well, there was no time for that, so I emailed the legal attaché in India from my breakfast table. Within an hour, an instructor from Quantico called. Here's the plan. I'm on this assignment too. I'll drive into D.C., pick up your official passport with the Indian visa, and bring it to you in Mali. Since the Maldives doesn't require a visa, just use your tourist passport when you land there. I left the house at 1 a.m. and met some of our team at LAX. After a 6-hour delay, we settled in for a 7,300-mile, 15-hour flight to Hong Kong, where we changed planes for a 4-hour hop to Singapore. An overnight stay there afforded us some real food, hot shower, and much-needed rest. The next day saw an 8-hour flight to Kuala Lumpur, then a 4-hour flight to Mali, where we finally arrived at 9 p.m. local time. The legal attaché and 5 local policemen met us at the tarmac to usher us through customs. We gathered our gear and followed them to a dock about 100 yards away, where a police boat was waiting. The country is made up of 1,200 small islands. The airport was on one and the hotel on another. It took about 20 minutes to motor across the calm sea to Bandos Island, where resort reps met us with fresh mango drinks and maps to our bungalows. It was a muggy 15-minute walk along raked sand paths to room number 225, where I took a shower and fell into bed. At sunrise, bright red parrots chattered in the palm trees, and crystal clear waves lapped the white sand just a few feet from my door. Since it was Sunday, I arranged for a couple of morning scuba dives before motoring over to Girafishi Island to meet the police and inspect the explosive ranges. This course would center on post-blast evidence collection and highlight the types of technical assistance the U.S. could offer in terrorist investigations. It came on the heels of the Maldives' first real terror attack. An IED had injured a dozen Western tourists just 8 months earlier at Sultan Park near the iconic Gold Dome Mosque. Both were common tourist attractions, and this country really needed the tourist dollars. Subsequent attacks included stabbings and arsons, which were attributed to ISIS. 3 men were quickly arrested for the Sultan Park bombing and admitted their goal was to target Muslims as part of a jihad. The FBI provided assistance for the investigation and wanted to strengthen relationships with the Maldivian authorities.
I have actually also been in the situation of flying out of LAX without a visa. I told you yesterday when we talked that we went to the Neil Diamond concert in Sydney, Australia. You know, the rules can be confusing because Chris did all the research. He was told you don't need a visa. So we got to LAX and they asked us, do you have your visa to land in Australia? We're like, okay. So he applied on his phone, and before we left LAX, he had his visa on his phone. I didn't. And so we crossed the entire Pacific with me just hoping, is he going to the Neil Diamond concert by himself? Am I going to spend 36 hours by myself in
the airport.
Australian airport? Luckily, by the time we landed, I had mine. But why was this an issue, since in the end, the Maldives didn't require a visa anyway? Did someone just get their wires crossed?
No, from the Maldives, which does not require a visa, I was going to India, which does.
Oh, afterward.
Right.
Okay.
So I would leave we flew from the Maldives to Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka to New Delhi, where I would spend a few weeks teaching there. But
Okay.
you needed a visa for India.
Okay, that makes more sense now. Now, you grew up in Alabama, right?
Yes.
So you spent your whole life there before you joined or left for college?
Right. Well, I went to school down in Tuscaloosa at University of Alabama, and then my goal, my absolute goal, was to get in the FBI. But when I
Mhm,
finished that accounting degree, I was too young to get in. So I had to take a job as an
mhm.
accountant, which was very low on my list. And that job was in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
I worked as an accountant in the private sector there until I finally got in the bureau.
So, how many places had you traveled before you joined the FBI?
Oh, we would go to Mexico or Florida,
Hmm.
something like that. Nothing as exotic as some of these places. Some of them I literally hadn't heard of, and never
Hmm.
thought I would get to see firsthand. I was fortunate. I've worked on every continent but Antarctica, and
Hmm.
I hope to get there one day. So,
I looked into the price to go. As I had mentioned, we kind of had the opportunity to go that fell through. I think the cheapest I found was $13,000 to do it on our own.
yeah, yeah, that's
So
why I haven't done it yet.
that's why you haven't gone yet. So what was travel part of your reason for wanting to join the FBI, or what was behind your desire to?
No, I had no idea that we would even be able to travel internationally like this. When I was a kid, I grew up with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. and the FBI story, Elliot Ness and the Untouchables, and this just struck me as sort of the 800-pound gorilla for justice, taking up the voice for people who had lost their voice to criminals. Um, it was sort of a pie in the sky kid's view of the world.
Mhm.
But I grew up in Birmingham, and I remember seeing the Ku Klux Klan on the streets, and um, so it just did not seem right to me. And sort of that sense of justice after seeing the movies and that it just enthralled me. And plus, then I learned my Little League baseball coach was an actual FBI agent, and that just
Mhm.
threw fuel on the fire.
Yeah, I bet. So at the height of your travel, how many days a year were you in transit or out of your home?
It would depend on world events, like what happened in the Maldives. There was a terrorist attack.
Mhm.
Uh, I was on what's called a fly team, a worldwide rapid response team. So we would send personnel there, whether it's our scientists or other specialists, and then develop a training program to show these friendly countries how we could help. Because if we can stop
Mhm.
terrorists overseas, then we won't have to deal with them here. So the FBI has a lot of really impressive resources. One's called TDAC, the Terrorist Explosive Analytical Devices Center. So if we can teach other countries how to collect forensic evidence in a way that we can process it, not only can we find the person that put the bomb down, but we can also find the people that engineered them and designed them and built
Mhm.
them. And then we can take appropriate action against them wherever they may be.
Right. So would you, like, at the height of your travel, would you say you were gone from home, 3 months of the year or only a few weeks or
Oh, again,
here?
it depends on the situation. I was
Mhm.
in England for 6 weeks at a time, but I would
Mhm.
be in Romania for 2 weeks at a time. It
Mhm.
was really just mission dependent, but easily a quarter a year on average, I would say, when I was doing the whole counterterrorism thing.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and it was very fluid, and some of it would be, last minute. Um, it was exciting, but it was hard to make plans at home.
Right, right. Well, and that's kind of the question I was leading up to. And obviously, there are many careers where you have to travel a lot. I mean, for a long time, my husband was traveling a lot, 2 million miles on Delta alone. And my dad, of course, in the military, there were years when he traveled a lot. How do you hold a marriage together and a family? I mean, like you were called at Walt Disney World and hey, you're leaving. How does that impact family life?
Well, my wife was a federal agent. She was a federal
Hmm.
probation officer, and we met in the line of work. In one of my white collar cases, I had indicted about a dozen people in one case, and she was handling about six of them. So we met, spent a lot of time together. So she knew what I did from the day we met.
Hmm.
Um, it was a little more intense as the world changed. She was in the Murrah building 2 minutes before detonation. So
Yes.
grace to God, she's still alive. She drove right in front of that 5,000 pound bomb. Uh,
Wow.
2 minutes, made a difference. And we know people that didn't survive that attack. So
Right.
it's a job as our military partners and our law enforcement partners. It's got to be done, and it is a strain on a family. Our son was born, so when I was here, I made sure to coach every team he was on. I knew nothing about soccer. They didn't have that in Alabama when I grew up, but I was his soccer coach for the Y, and I coached baseball and basketball. So you do what you can to make up for
Right.
that loss.
Yeah. And I would assume it takes the right spouse too. I think there are some who can't handle that. And hopefully they know that going in. So throughout the book, you use scuba in all caps, which I think would surprise some people. Define what scuba actually means.
It's an acronym, so it should be capitalized. It's self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, scuba.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I was a scuba diver as a kid, and as things changed around the world, underwater scenes became important. I became an instructor for some of our underwater schools as well.
So I have to ask, I had a very good friend who actually made his living in scuba diving, and he tried to teach me to scuba dive. I found it one of the first things in my life. I just said, I don't think I can do this. I was fine with the mask on, but as soon as I put my face in the water, it didn't matter how much I'd been breathing through the tube. As long as my face wasn't in the water, I could do it. But the second I hit the water, it panic. And it took a lot of deep breathing and calming
Sure.
myself down. How is the learning process for you, and how do you teach other people to do that?
Well, again, I've been diving since high school, and
Hmm.
just for fun. I was a recreational diver. Then we started teaching some advanced diving courses. Now, this is way off in the weeds. Your friend will know, but there are things called master divers, and then there are dive
Hmm.
masters. So dive masters teach diving. I was a master diver. I had a number of highly specialized certifications,
Hmm.
night dives, rescue dives, deep dives, a bunch of different types of certifications. So in these schools we taught, these were already highly advanced divers, Navy
Okay.
divers, military EOD, bomb technicians basically,
Hmm.
or search and rescue divers. So when I say it was a diving school, it was basically post-blast investigation, but underwater,
Hmm.
usually water where you can't even see. So you're doing a lot of it by feel.
Yeah. I at the time I kind of got into reading some scuba forums, and some of the stories of what can go wrong down there are pretty scary. When the sand kicks up and you become disoriented. And I love the idea of going down there and looking at the beautiful fish. But the first time I went was in Alaska, and the people who took us out in a group showed us things like sea cucumbers in this
Right.
cold, murky, dank water. And it was funny. There was this guy next to me, and he's like this, big, tough, burly looking guy. Looks like he was the linebacker on his football team. And they gave us these noodles because most of us were beginners. And he kept grabbing my noodle and shoving me off. It was so funny. I'm like, you look like a big, tough guy. Why are you shoving me in the water to steal my noodle?
He might have been
He
on land. Right.
Right, right. He definitely wasn't in the water. But of all these places, how many countries have you been in? Do you know
I
of?
counted him once flying somewhere just because you get bored. I
Uh-huh.
think almost 70.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a lot. What do you think was one of the most interesting places you visited?
Beyond the work, wherever I was, I tried to take advantage of any opportunity. So we were doing a underwater school in Melbourne, And I said, I told our Australian counterpart, I said, look, I'll never be this close to the Great Barrier Reef. And he goes, well, that's 2,000 kilometers from here. I said, well, it's still closer than Oklahoma. So we took the weekend and went diving on the Great Barrier Reef. I was in Ukraine after the first Russian invasion, and there's some fascinating UNESCO sites in Ukraine. Um, I was in Nepal after the earthquakes there. But yeah, we chartered a flight to see Mount Everest. It's
Mhm.
just so many amazing opportunities I had that I just never dreamed were possible
Right.
as an agent, certainly not as an accountant.
Right, right. You don't go to Nepal as an accountant usually. You were at Ground Zero at 9/11. My daughter's dorm room when she was in college actually looked down on Ground Zero, if I remember correctly. I think it looked directly down onto it. What were some of your most profound experiences there?
Well, the FBI special agent bomb technician, there were only a couple of hundred of us in in the world at any one time, and Lenny Hatton was the FBI bomb technician in New York, and he died when the buildings collapsed. He
Oh.
went in to rescue people. He was a
Hmm.
volunteer firefighter on the side, former Marine, just a great guy, and he was killed when the buildings came down. So the bureau sent four of us up there to support our New York office because we didn't know, early on, just like Waco, this had never happened. This was an unprecedented attack, so we didn't
Right.
know. I arrived in the evening, and the hotel desk clerk handed me a note that said your shift starts at 8 p.m. tonight. And we had a command post set up very near Ground Zero. So I walked from our command post down to the site along the Hudson River. And when I went through there was a glass garden there. It was it reminded me of Planet of the Apes kind of
Hmm.
destruction. It was unbelievable, just the magnitude and the scale of the
Yeah.
destruction. But of course, there was still heavy equipment was working, so there was concrete dust and the diesel fumes. All these things I'd smelled and seen at the Oklahoma City bombing and after the fire at Waco. It was all very reminiscent of those other just horrible events. Um, yeah, it was. These are things you just don't forget.
Right, right. And how do you deal psychologically with seeing these things that most of us never have to deal with?
Well, I early on, it wasn't even talked about. PTSD or these things that are real. Um, I Now that looking back, I think I tend to just put each one in its own little box and
Hmm.
put a tight lid on it. And you can't forget these things, but I don't dwell on
Yeah.
them. I think it's unhealthy to just sit and dwell on those dark things. I mean, Waco was bad. I've seen people crushed and burned and blown apart, and but that's not unique in this industry. Our military partners, our state and local, police,
Right.
is a sad part of the job. Um, but friends, faith, family, you have to have some positive way so you don't bring all that darkness home because it'll eat you alive. That's why
I can see
suicide
that it could. Hmm.
is so high in military and law enforcement. It's a sad tragedy. If you just There has to be a positive way to deal with that kind of thing.
Right. Well, I think you're exposed so much. I mean, especially as I believe you're talking about in the reading coming up. So, how about I just introduce drink number three and you can read about some of this? So, drink number three is called the Bourbon Bomb. And the bourbon bomb has, I don't know if you can see it, I can't. It has half a lemon cut into wedges. It has five cherries cut in half. It has 2.5 ounces of bourbon, 1 tablespoon of maple syrup, and ice. So, I think what I was saying before we started asking if you could hear it was Chris doing the muddling, where you take a little thing and you pound and pound. and muddle it all together. So you muddle the lemon cherries, you add bourbon and maple syrup, you add ice and stir, or you shake and serve. So,
I think that'll probably be my favorite of the three.
mm, I think this might be my favorite. Yeah, that's nice. All three of these are decent drinks. I think I like all three. I think I like that one the best. Go ahead with reading number three.
So this story is about weapons of mass destruction. Explosives weren't the only WMD threat. The U.S. had seen unconventional weapons such as anthrax, ricin, toxic industrial chemicals, and even radiological dirty bombs. Expecting the trend to continue, the Bureau created its Weapon of Mass Destruction Directorate in 2006. To enhance my knowledge as Oklahoma City's WMD coordinator, I was certified as a hazardous materials technician and attended highly classified restricted training provided by the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, and other specialized agencies. The Naval Surface Warfare Center in Indian Head, Maryland, was established in 1890 and was the oldest joint military school in the country. The unique training curriculum at this University of Bombs and Bullets required a Q clearance from the Department of Energy in addition to my top secret clearance. The Q clearance allowed access to special nuclear material data and nuclear weapon designs, subjects that could only be discussed in a sensitive compartmentalized information facility, or SCIF. The class at Indian Head, known as the Advanced Access and Disablement Course, was incorporated written exams and pass and fail practical exercises that employed advanced technology to defeat extremely sophisticated unconventional weapons. The hands-on scenarios evolved in the deep woods of the installation or in a multi-story building called a kill house. Each kill house was constructed within cavernous, windowless warehouses so hostile satellites couldn't observe the sensitive techniques being used against realistic, though inert, devices. Each scenario centered on an improvised nuclear weapon, dirty bomb, or chemical delivery system with penalties for failure. Fatalities were immediately tallied on a football-size scoreboard as sirens wailed and strobe lights announced another catastrophic detonation. The logistical and technical solutions were complex and captured in the school's unofficial motto, "I stared into the eyes of the beast, then it ate me." The weeks in Maryland were followed by additional training at CIA's secretive site known as The Farm. After rolling to a stop at the outer perimeter, an armed guard checked my credentials against his clipboard and provided an alphanumeric code granting access to the living quarters, conference rooms, and demolition ranges that would be home for the next week. Passing through the main gate, a series of pop-up bollards created a serpentine route along a narrow road leading through the heavily wooded facility. I arrived about dusk and noted there were no street lights and very few street signs. All intersecting roads were designed with sharp curves to prevent a direct line of sight. The dorm was a 3-story cinder block building set in a circular clearing accessible only by a 1-lane road. Though students had private rooms, there was no way to lock the door from the inside. Except for days on the explosives range, everything we needed was in that building. A skiff for classes, a restaurant, TV, lounges, and exactly 2 hardline telephones. No cameras, cell phones, internet devices, or weapons were permitted. The course delved deeply into chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons, as well as terrorist tactics, techniques, and procedures. The lecturers included medical doctors, PhDs, weapons engineers, military specialists, and experts from every 3-letter agency in the government. The next training evolution occurred at the Navy's Training and Evaluation Unit at Fort Story, Virginia. Some of the nation's top scientists lectured on radiological dispersal devices, improvised nuclear weapons, and other horrific threats that faced our nation.
And this is kind of what I was leading up to or referring to is you start going on about all these weapons and all these wonderful ways terrorists have come up with to kill us. How do you go? Most of us don't need to think about that. Do you manage to compartmentalize that in your mind and just, go about life as if you don't know that? Or do you take the attitude, I know, so I can do something about it? How do you cope with that?
Well, these threats are real, and
Hmm.
the results would be catastrophic. So, to be a small part of a resolution, to
Hmm.
me, it's a service. Most people, whether in the military or in law enforcement, uh, you're a public servant, and
Yep.
some of the details, the nitty gritty, how the sausage is made, just isn't public. But
Yep.
the FBI, is responsible for the response for these unconventional catastrophic weapons, and the training's fabulous, but
Yeah.
it's a perishable skill, and it requires a lot of concentration.
Right, I bet. So you don't get to listen to Prince or Neil Diamond while you're
Not while
defusing a
we're
bomb.
Yep,
Start
not while
dancing
we're
and pull the wrong wire. See, that's what I like about my job. I can listen to that stuff while I'm feeding the sheep, and usually nobody gets hurt. I did
right.
get trampled by a ram once, but that wasn't from listening to music.
You'll recover from
So,
that.
right, right. I panicked him. It was my own fault. So, when you are working with these bombs and things, I mean, you're not now because you're retired, but at the time, what goes through your head? Do you approach each one saying this could be my last moment on earth, or do you just learn to say, I've done this and I'm going to do it again and it'll be fine and I'm going home?
There is a lot of training involved, and safety is paramount. And there's the old saying, you play like you practice. So
Hmm.
the amount of training, particularly the FBI bomb technicians get, but we certify all the non-military bomb techs in the country.
Okay.
There's only one bomb school. It's the FBI school down at Redstone Arsenal. And we work with and learn from our military partners. So there's a
Mhm.
great deal of education. And when we're on these events, you trust your training, you trust your knowledge, and there is a pretty sharp learning curve. So you trust your experience. And the agent that took over my position, he was under my wing for a little while, and we became very close friends and still are. Just as
Mhm.
the got me in the program until he passed away, we were great friends. So it's a very tight knit community,
Yeah.
both law enforcement and military, and it's something um, I miss the frequency with which I see some of these folks, but we still
Mhm.
socialize, which is a benefit of the internet, which ties back to that
Right.
technology advantage we have
Right.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to backtrack a little bit, even as I asked you the question, I was thinking, I'm, it's not the same, but two of my sons are in the military. One is a police officer. And so there is this constant awareness, if a war is starting somewhere or continuing, what if my son is the one who gets sent there? And in fact, one of my sons was in the Middle East for about 10 months. My son, who's a police officer, not a day goes by that I don't think about the city he's in can be a tougher place to be a police officer. But I do have to look at it, as you said, it's a service. Somebody has to do it, and I give them great credit. I, as a mother, would say, no, go teach piano lessons. Nobody gets hurt.
Right. Sure.
But this is what they're called to do. This is what they want to do. And I do have to look at it as this is a calling and a life service, and they're doing a great deal of good for other people. So, uh, what procedures and what military, or not military, but governmental departments did you have to go through to get this book published? I know I've talked to probably a couple other authors who had to get their books approved. What is the process?
So for any FBI employee, there's a unit at FBI headquarters that has to approve it as basically a pre-publication unit. Um, Mine was a little unique because my career path was not common. So our critical incident response group, which handles a lot of the emergency response things, national special security events and such, the military. I worked very closely with special forces from each of the military branches and other federal agencies, three-letter agencies that touched some of the things I discussed. So it was vetted pretty thoroughly. And
Mhm.
some, even though I was very careful as I wrote it, there were some passages that they said we would prefer you take this out, and it was really pretty innocuous to me. And
Hmm.
frankly, a lot of it was public record. But,
Oh,
you know,
interesting.
yeah, but
What was their reasoning then?
they didn't give one and I didn't ask. They just said we would prefer you take
Okay.
it out. And I wanted
And
the,
when they
so I
said
took
we
it out.
prefer you take it out, it was you will take this out, I take it.
Yeah, if you wanted it published or without going through a lot
Uh-huh.
of hurdles, and I could have, I'm sure, made the argument. For instance, I attended one school by, well, it was a CIA school, and it was at one point it was highly secret. Its existence was denied,
Hmm.
but my group of FBI bomb techs was the first group to go to this particular school, and the week before, there had been an article in a national newspaper that sort of outed the existence of this school. So I just quoted the article in the book, but this particular agency said, we need you to take that out.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, it was in the newspaper. And they're like, yeah, we don't care. Take it out. So, I took it out, which is absolutely fine. I
Right.
don't even know their whole situational picture. And if it's sensitive and doesn't, and it really didn't add anything. It was just sort of an oddity to me that a week
Yeah.
before we went, the secrecy was gone. But
Yeah. Well, that's why I like writing about military endeavors in 1300s. There's nobody around to tell me I can't.
nobody's going to argue. That's right.
Yeah, if I can find out about it, probably anyone can. So you are in Oklahoma's Law Enforcement Hall of Fame. I didn't even know. Does every state have a Law Enforcement Hall of Fame?
Truly, I don't know the answer to that,
Okay.
but obviously, by its name, it's a state organization, and I was really truly honored to be
Hmm.
recognized. That's my state and local partners. There are only two FBI agents, in it,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
well,
And
it's designed for state and locals. But I was very honored and had the opportunity to work very very closely with a lot of state and local agencies, and for them to think that highly of me was really humbling.
yes, that is. What did you do? Was it for a particular thing or more a lifetime achievement sort of thing, all of it together that you were inducted into it?
It was I spent 31 years here, which is
Mhm.
unusual. Most FBI agents move a number of times. It's just
Okay.
part of the job. But because I arrived in Oklahoma during the oil bust when banks were failing and the economy was tanking, a lot of my cases took several years to work.
Hmm.
So as the cases became different, and then the bombing, I was one of two FBI bomb technicians here. So I worked that case for a number of years. It just worked out where until Director Free got his position, he decided if an agent had been somewhere for a decade and wanted to stay, they would just leave you. So I got
Okay.
to my entire career here. I was the National Academy Coordinator. So all the upwardly mobile officers that would go to the FBI's National Academy, I was their point of contact. Uh, Major events that involved explosives or terrorists, I was sort of the point of contact. So I just got to know really from the street police officers up through command in most of the agencies here in Oklahoma, and they're all fantastic people. It was an honor to work with them, and then after 3 decades, for them to turn around and induct me into their own Hall of Fame, again, it was that was a highlight for sure.
That is quite an achievement. What would you hope that people would take from your story, from your book?
Well, I think again, I was enamored with the FBI as a kid. It's being pilloried a little bit right now, and maybe with some good reason. But
Wait,
the
your book is being pilloried?
no, 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 the bureau is being pilloried.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so I would hope this book shows the diversity of the kind of
Hmm.
work that's being done every day by very committed and dedicated men and women. That the folks on the street, law enforcement, military, and our agents are doing the right thing. And there's a bad apple in every barrel, but
Yeah.
that I like to think there are more good people than bad. I've met a lot of really bad people, but the majority I think are good people. It's easy to focus on the negative. So I'm hopeful the book is an entertaining read, but really does sort of highlight the scope and magnitude of the responsibility the FBI
Right.
has in protecting this country.
Yeah, I did find some of it interesting. As in, I wouldn't necessarily have guessed the FBI did some of these things. For instance, you talk a lot about your accounting work. Why is the FBI getting involved in some of these cases rather than, say, local law enforcement? Is it if it crosses state lines?
Well, for instance, Al Capone was caught for tax evasion, right? So
Right.
if you a lot of times follow the money, these cases, you hear of fraud in the news now to the tunes of billions of dollars. I worked myself one case for 4 years. Well, a local department can't dedicate a body for 4 years to one case.
Okay.
And we have the ability to get financial records globally. I
Okay.
mentioned the term legal attaché in one of our passages. Well, we have agents stationed in embassies around the world. They're known as legal attachés. So I had an international money laundering case that took 4 years to get to the bottom, but the records were in several different countries. So I would go talk with the legal attaché. They have no power, but they have the liaison with the local host nation. So we get the records, but it takes a long time.
Mhm.
So to answer your question, it's just the size and magnitude of the cases the FBI works that we have the resources to handle them.
Okay. So, and I think you just referenced some of the fraud that's currently being uncovered. Does your experience explain? I mean, to those of us just sitting out here saying it's all over the news, there's billions of dollars in fraud. Why isn't anybody being arrested? Is this why? Because it just takes time to get all the evidence and proof lined up?
Well, first you need a thread to pull, right? You have to
Mhm.
know there's a problem here, so you have to go look. And then you interview people, reviewing. I had one case, the records were delivered in a semi truck. There were 800 bankers' boxes of documents. Well, you have to read them all because you don't know what's in there. So these are
Right.
extreme time consuming cases, and some of them you need a financial eye. So you're going to need accountants or somebody with a financial background just to understand the documents. I'm not an architect, so I shouldn't be reviewing building plans, but
Mhm.
uh, you need accountants to look over financial records, and it's just an exceptionally time consuming thing. But once you get that thread to pull, and you get access to the records, and some people fight you for access to the records. Then you have to go through them, see if it fits the criteria for a crime, and then you have to find a prosecutor that's willing to prosecute it. And then the grand jury has to believe that a crime was committed, so there's an indictment. Just very time-consuming process.
Right. And hopefully that helps people understand. We were in Minnesota, so our taxes were directly impacted by the fraud there. So, what is your advice for other people who want to write their memoir?
Everybody's got a story.
I
I
agree.
literally got to travel the world and meet some just exceedingly interesting people. I would stop and literally talk to the mango man in Trinidad. He just how did you get here? What do you
The
do?
Mango Man.
Exactly. And it's just fascinating stories. I sat and talked to the steel drum guy and found out that the steel drum was the only instrument invented in the 20th century. Just
Really?
these crazy things you can pick up if you take the time. So
Hmm.
uh, you've got a story. It takes a little discipline to get it written down. For me, it was cathartic a little bit. Some of these things are kind of sad. We've talked about some of the lighter hearted ones.
Yeah.
But you get deep in the weeds about Waco or the Oklahoma City bombing or 9/11 or some of these. It's difficult, but I found it cathartic, and I'm again hopeful one day, if not my son, then maybe his kids would be interested. So I encourage whoever, write your story down. Everybody's got a good story.
Yeah, I like that. I briefly taught, I was teaching at, let me see if I can remember the name of the college, Minneapolis Community and Tech, it might have been called. And I was teaching memoir writing. It was absolutely fascinating. These people would come in that, yes, you're right. Everybody has a story. You look at someone and you think, they're just living an ordinary life. One of my students was making plans for hiking, I believe it was the Pacific Crest Trail, and the full thing, which is thousands of miles. And she had plans and she was going to keep notes and write a memoir about it. I had one man, I can't remember, he was an older man. He came from somewhere in the Middle East and, just this very small, unassuming man. And as he started talking about his life story, he's talking about growing up in whatever country this was with this Muslim father who had multiple wives in different houses, and how he got involved with some covert military operations there. And it was one of these things where even then he was not sure how much he could say or
Right.
where he might cross the line, but he knew all these things that he wanted to tell that the world didn't know. And I think so many people are like that. And even if it's not that dramatic, all our life experiences have something to teach.
Sure.
And I, for one, prefer to learn from other people's mistakes than from my own.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
which is a great reason for reading memoirs or even reading fiction for that matter, because it's the same thing. It's a story that tells you something about life. So, do you think that you will write another book now that you've written one?
Oh, I'm afraid I'm a one-trick pony, really.
Okay.
Again, I never imagined this would actually be a book.
Hmm.
I had stories on napkins and the back of envelopes, whatever you could find on an aircraft, and had them in
Hmm.
a drawer. And I just put them kind of in chronological order just so I could keep them straight. Thinking one day, as I said, maybe for my family. But I was just so blessed and fortunate when the publisher contacted me, and it was a lightning bolt out of the blue. So no, I don't see I don't see another book. I think all the good stories are in this one.
Well, as soon as you say that, just like that, an idea is going to hit you and you're going to go, wait, I am writing another book.
Maybe so.
So, where can people find you online?
So I have a little website. It's Barry Black OKC. That's Barry, black like the color, OKC.com. That's a great way to get me. The book's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you get books. Uh, I still do some speaking engagements. I've got a few coming up, government agencies as well as private organizations. I enjoy that. I like people. That's one thing I loved about my job at the Bureau is every day we
Hmm.
interview somebody and got to learn their story. But
Yep.
yeah, so barryblackokc.com is a great way.
All right. Do you have any public events coming up?
I've got a couple in Birmingham. I was hoping to maybe swing by and see you guys there in Tennessee. So I'll be at the Homewood Main Library. It's the centennial of my little town of Homewood. So
Nice.
they're
Okay.
having some centennial events, and one is called Night with the Authors. And
Hmm.
there's going to be about a dozen local authors, and they included me, even though I haven't been there in three
Nice.
decades.
Hmm.
And then I've got a little private event the next night there. And then I'm doing an event for a law enforcement, a federal agency here this summer, and
Okay.
then heading into Delaware later in the fall. So I enjoy getting around and meeting
Okay.
new people.
Are all these events on your author page?
Uh, no, they're not.
Okay.
I'm technically lacking, so I really don't have a true author page. I guess it's a hangover from being in the bureau so long. I don't tell
Hmm.
people I'm going, which is a downfall if you're an author. Um,
Right.
Things I've done in the past, I've got a web guy because I certainly couldn't do that myself. But I send those to him when they're over. So I'm not real good at the advertising part yet. This is all new to
Okay.
me.
Okay. Well, hopefully people will see it here, take notes, and show up at your events. So people can find me at lauravosica.com. My books are there, and actually it has links to everything else I do online, which is probably more than I should. You can find my other program at booksandbrews.net. You can find my publisher and our sponsor at gabrielshornpress.com. And you can find all our wonderful animals, possibly one day including a white Highland cow, which I didn't think existed, at glenmerrillfarms.wordpress.com. And I do not have public events unless somebody wants to help me scoop rabbit poop. I will make that public and you may come and help me. I will not object. And coming up next, now this is, I believe, on Books and Brews, but we will have other people coming up on Step Into a Story too. We have Benjamin Schwarting, who writes epic fantasy, and we have Sarah Hathaway, who writes survival drama slash thriller slash family drama. That was a bit of a tongue twister for me. But that's what she writes if you can decipher that. So thank you very much for being our guest on Step Into a Story.
My
Nice to
pleasure.
meet you.
Good to meet you as well. I'll be looking forward to the mango bourbon next time I'm in Tennessee.